river does not need to be told where to go. It moves around stone. It bends beneath branches. It widens where the earth allows it to widen, and narrows where the banks draw close. It does not pause to wonder whether another river is moving more gracefully. It does not hurry, because the sea seems far away. It simply follows the shape of the land. Perhaps this is why rivers have always seemed wise, and perhaps this is why the old teachings of the Tao so often return to water. Water does not argue with the world. It does not insist that the world become easier before it agrees to flow. It meets what is here, takes the shape of what is here, and continues. You may have arrived here carrying a very different kind of movement. The movement of thoughts that will not settle. The movement of plans continuing long after the day has ended. The movement of old conversations being replayed, new conversations being rehearsed, and small unfinished things asking for attention as though they cannot possibly wait until morning. You lie down, but some part of you remains standing, still working, still watching, still trying to guide the river with your hands. And when sleep does not come quickly, you may begin trying even harder. You adjust the pillow. You turn to one side, then the other. You tell yourself that you must relax. You calculate how much time remains before morning. You attempt to force the mind into silence. This is such a human thing to do. You are not failing at rest. You are simply meeting a mind that learned, perhaps over many years, that effort is how things get done. It learned to solve, to organize, to predict, to prepare. These abilities may have carried you through many difficult days, but sleep is not a problem that effort can solve. Sleep is more like muddy water becoming clear. The water does not clear because someone reaches into the bowl and pushes the mud downward. It clears because the bowl is left alone. This is where we begin. Not with another task, not with something you must master, not with a demand to empty your mind or become perfectly calm. Only with the possibility that, for a little while, you may stop stirring the water. You do not need to know anything about the Tao Te Ching. You do not need to understand ancient philosophy. You do not need to remember the words that follow. These teachings were not made to become another weight for the mind to carry. They point toward what is already close. The breath entering, the breath leaving, the bed beneath you, the darkness around you. The simple fact that, for this moment, nothing more is required. Perhaps you might allow one breath to arrive without improving it. Not a special breath. Not a deeper breath unless it naturally wishes to deepen. Just the next breath. Let it come. Let it go. And notice how the body already knows something about the Tao. The lungs receive. The lungs release. The heart beats without being reminded. The body settles toward the mattress without needing to study the art of settling. There is already a quiet wisdom moving beneath your effort. The Tao Te Ching speaks of a way that cannot be completely captured in words. The word Tao can be translated as the way, but even that translation is only a small doorway. It may mean the way life moves when it is not forced, the way the seasons turn, the way roots grow in darkness, the way water finds the lowest ground, the way an empty room becomes useful because it is empty. The teaching does not ask you to believe in something distant. It asks you to look again at what is ordinary, a bowl, a doorway, a river, a tree bending in the wind, an old person who no longer needs to hurry, a child who has not yet learned to be ashamed of resting. And through these simple things, it whispers that perhaps life does not need to be held quite as tightly as we have been holding it. There is an old story that points to this. Long ago, near the edge of a quiet valley, a young traveler came to the home of an old teacher. The traveler had walked for many days, carrying a heavy bag across his shoulders. When the teacher opened the door, the traveler bowed and said, "I have come to learn the way." The teacher looked at the bag. "What are you carrying?" she asked. The traveler placed it on the floor and began removing its contents. There were books filled with notes. There were maps marked with possible roads. There were letters of introduction. There were carefully wrapped tools for every difficulty he imagined he might meet. The teacher watched quietly. At last, the traveler said, "I wanted to be prepared." The teacher nodded. Then she lifted a small clay cup and walked outside. The traveler followed her to a well. She lowered the bucket, drew up water, and filled the cup. Then she continued pouring. Water ran over the rim and onto the earth. The cup is full, the traveler said. Yes, the teacher replied. She kept pouring. You cannot put more into it. The teacher set down the bucket. Then perhaps, she said, your first lesson is not what to carry. Perhaps your first lesson is what to put down. The traveler looked toward the doorway where his bag waited. He had expected a secret. He had expected a difficult practice. He had expected to receive something. Instead, the teacher had spoken of release. This can feel almost disappointing to the busy part of the mind. We are accustomed to improvement through addition, another method, another plan, another explanation, another thing to remember when we wake in the night. But the Tao often teaches through subtraction, less grasping, less forcing, less interference. Not because knowledge is wrong, and not because preparation is useless. The traveler's books and maps were not bad. They had simply become so numerous that he could no longer feel the road beneath his feet. Perhaps you know something of this. You may have filled the cup of the day with responsibilities, messages, decisions, hopes, disappointments, and small acts of endurance that no one else noticed. You may have carried all of it with great care, but you do not have to carry the whole day into sleep. You do not have to bring every unfinished conversation beneath the blanket. You do not have to solve tomorrow while lying in the dark tonight. The mind may keep offering you things. It may lift one concern after another from the bag and say, remember this, examine this, prepare for this. You do not have to argue. You might simply answer, not now, not never, just not now. The cup can be placed down. The bag can remain near the door. Morning will know where to find it. For now, feel the weight of your body. Perhaps the jaw can be held a little less firmly. Perhaps the shoulders can descend by a distance so small that no one would see it. Perhaps the hands can stop preparing. There is nothing they need to hold. Let the breath come as it comes. Let the breath leave as it leaves. And when you are ready, we will continue along the river. One of the best-known teachings of the Tao is called Wu Wei. The words can sound mysterious, but the heart of them is very simple. Wu Wei is often translated as non-doing, effortless action, or action without forcing. It does not mean doing nothing at all. It does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. It does not ask us to abandon our lives and wait for everything to arrange itself. It means something closer to moving with the grain of the wood rather than against it. It means acting without unnecessary struggle. It means noticing when effort is useful and when effort has become a clenched hand. A skilled gardener works. A gardener carries water, clears weeds, supports young branches, and protects tender roots. But the gardener does not pull on a plant to make it grow faster. That would be effort without wisdom. Growth happens through care, but not through force. Sleep is like this. You can prepare a quiet room. You can lie down. You can soften the light. You can let the day end. But you cannot pull sleep toward you by its leaves. The harder you pull, the more awake you become. There is a story sometimes told about a farmer who became impatient with his field. Each morning, he walked among the young shoots and measured them with his fingers. They seemed to him to be growing far too slowly. He watched his neighbor's field. He worried that those plants looked taller. He watched the sky. He worried there had not been enough rain. He studied the soil. He worried he had planted at the wrong time. At last, the farmer decided to help. He moved carefully from one shoot to the next, pulling each one a little higher from the earth. By sunset, every plant stood taller. The farmer returned home pleased. I have helped the whole field grow, he told his family. The next morning, he hurried outside. The plants had withered. His effort had not been cruel. It had come from concern. He wanted the field to thrive. He wanted assurance that the future would be safe. But he had mistaken control for care. This is an easy mistake to make. We do it with our work. We do it with people we love. We do it with our own healing. We do it with sleep. We ask, why am I not there yet? Why am I not calmer? Why am I not stronger? Why am I not sleeping? Then we reach down and pull at the tender shoot. Wu Wei suggests another way. Water the ground. Make room for sunlight. Protect what is young. Then wait. Waiting is not neglect. Stillness is not failure. Something may be happening beneath the soil that cannot be hurried and does not need to be watched. The old teachings often tell us, that the deepest processes of life happen quietly. Roots thicken in darkness. Water gathers below stone. A wound closes one small layer at a time. Night moves toward morning without making an announcement. You may not be able to see the body preparing for sleep. That does not mean nothing is happening. Even now, as you listen, the rhythm of the words may be becoming less important. The spaces between them may be widening. Your attention may drift and return. A sentence may pass without being remembered. This is not a problem. It may be the beginning of rest. You do not need to hold on to the thread. You do not need to understand every teaching. You are allowed to lose your place. You are allowed to fall behind. There is nowhere to arrive except here. Perhaps you can carry this with you tonight. You do not make the plant grow. You offer the conditions, and then you stop pulling. Let the bed support you. Let the room remain dark around you. Let the night do some of the work. A slow breath may move through the chest. The weight of the body may become a little more noticeable. Nothing must happen immediately. There is time, and we can go on gently. Water is soft. A hand can pass through it. A stone can divide it. A cup can contain it. Yet over time, water changes stone. It does not change stone by striking once with great force. It changes stone by returning, again and again, softly, without anger, without announcing its strength. The Tao Te Ching returns to this image because water seems weak when we judge strength by hardness. But hardness and strength are not always the same thing. A rigid branch can break in a storm. A flexible branch bends and rises again. A clenched body becomes exhausted. A soft body can receive support. You may have learned that strength means remaining tight. Perhaps you learned to keep moving when you were tired, to stay composed when you were hurt, to solve problems before anyone noticed there was a problem. There may have been good reasons for this. The body remembers what helped it survive a difficult season. It may carry yesterday's armor into tonight's bed, and so the forehead remains slightly drawn. The tongue presses against the roof of the mouth. The stomach holds itself as though expecting news. The shoulders remain prepared for a weight that is no longer there. This is not your body betraying you. It is your body trying to help in the only way it learned. You do not have to scold it. You can thank it. And perhaps, very quietly, you can let it know that for this moment, the storm has passed. Consider a small story. In a village surrounded by hills, there lived a maker of baskets. She was known for weaving reeds so tightly that her baskets could carry grain without losing a single seed. A young apprentice came to learn from her. The apprentice was eager and strong. He pulled every reed firmly. He tightened each crossing until the basket walls became hard beneath his fingers. But again and again, the reeds split. The apprentice became frustrated. "I am not pulling hard enough," he said. The basket maker smiled. "You are pulling too hard." She placed a fresh reed in warm water and let it rest. After a while, she lifted it and bent it slowly. The reed curved without breaking. "It must become soft," she said. The apprentice frowned. "But the basket must be strong." "Yes," the basket maker replied. "That is why the reed must become soft." The apprentice began again. At first, loosening his grip felt careless. He feared the basket would fall apart. But as he learned to feel the reed rather than command it, the shape became stronger. The basket held because it had been woven with attention, not force. There are many places in life where we confuse tension with responsibility. We believe that if we stop worrying, we will stop caring. If we stop anticipating every difficulty, we will become unprepared. If we soften, everything may come apart. But perhaps the basket is not held together by strain. Perhaps love can remain when worry loosens. Perhaps responsibility can remain when fear loosens. Perhaps you can rest without abandoning your life. The bed is not asking you to prove your strength. The night is not measuring your usefulness. Nothing valuable will be lost because your shoulders soften. Nothing essential will disappear because the jaw unclenches. You are not held together by tension. You are held by something deeper. The basket maker knew that softness is not the opposite of strength. It is a form of strength that can remain in relationship with the world. Water yields to the stone and continues beyond it. The reed bends and becomes part of a basket. The tree moves with the wind and keeps its roots. You might allow the next breath to move through you like water around a stone. It does not need to remove the stone. It does not need to solve anything. It only needs to pass. And the next breath can pass too. Perhaps there is a sound outside the room. Perhaps there is a faint movement in the house. Perhaps there is only the low, familiar quiet of night. You do not need complete silence. You only need permission to stop resisting what is already here. Let the body be heavy. Let the breath be ordinary. Let softness become a kind of shelter. The Tao Te Ching speaks often of emptiness. At first, emptiness can sound lonely. We may hear the word and imagine absence, loss, or a room from which everything warm has been removed. But the old teaching points toward another kind of emptiness. The usefulness of a bowl is in the open space it holds. The usefulness of a room is in the space within its walls. The usefulness of a doorway is in the place where the wood is not. What is absent makes room for what may arrive. A cup crowded with stones cannot receive tea. A room filled from floor to ceiling cannot welcome a guest. A mind given no empty space becomes tired even of its own thoughts. Perhaps your days contain very little emptiness. There are sounds from the moment you wake. There are messages waiting. There are tasks that divide into smaller tasks. There is information arriving, opinions arriving, requests arriving. Even rest can become filled. We fill quiet moments with looking, reading, checking, remembering, not because we have done something wrong. Sometimes emptiness feels unfamiliar. Sometimes silence allows feelings to rise. Sometimes the next distraction seems easier than meeting the open space within us. But tonight, emptiness does not have to mean a great silence. It may mean one moment in which nothing new is added, one breath without a plan, one pause without reaching, one small space between thoughts. You do not have to create this space. It is already there. Thoughts seem continuous when we are caught inside them. But even the busiest mind contains tiny gaps. A thought ends. Another has not yet fully formed. There is a brief opening. The opening may last less than a second. That is enough. The sky does not need the clouds to disappear forever in order to remain sky. It is there before the cloud. It is there around the cloud. It is there after the cloud has moved on. There is an old story about a potter who made beautiful bowls. People came from distant villages to buy them. They admired the smooth clay, the even shape, and the careful marks around the rim. One day, a visitor asked the potter, "What is the most important part of the bowl?" The visitor expected the potter to speak of clay, fire, patience, or skill. The potter placed a finished bowl between them. Then he pointed to the empty space inside it. "This," he said. The visitor laughed softly. "But that is nothing." The potter nodded. "Yes, and because of that nothing, the bowl can hold water." The visitor looked again. The bowl had not changed, but the way he saw it had. We often value what is visible, the work completed, the words spoken, the knowledge collected, the things held. The Tao asks us to notice the usefulness of what is not filled, the pause that keeps speech from becoming noise, the rest that allows work to continue, the silence in which understanding grows, the open hand that can receive. Tonight, you might imagine that you are the bowl, not because you are empty of value, not because something is missing, because you do not need to be full every moment. You do not need to fill yourself with answers. You do not need to hold the whole world. The open space within you is not a flaw. It is where sleep can arrive. There is another small story. At the edge of a mountain path stood a quiet house where travelers sometimes stopped for tea. An old woman lived there alone, tending a small garden and keeping a fire through the colder months. One evening, a weary traveler arrived carrying many questions. He asked her about the road ahead. He asked whether the weather would change. He asked which village would welcome him. He asked what he should do if he became lost. The old woman placed 2 cups on the table. The traveler continued speaking. She poured tea into the first cup and slid it toward him. Then she poured tea into the second cup and sat down. The traveler waited for answers. The old woman lifted her cup. After a while, the traveler lifted his. They drank in silence. At first, the silence made him restless. He wanted to ask again. He wanted to use the time wisely. But the tea was warm. Rain touched the roof. The fire shifted softly. His questions remained. but they no longer seemed to be standing so close to him. When the cups were empty, the old woman said, "The road will still be there in the morning." The traveler slept near the fire. When he woke, the weather had cleared. Not every question needs to be answered at the moment it appears. This is not avoidance. It is timing. A seed planted in winter is not lazy because it waits beneath the soil. The road is not lost because you cannot see it in darkness. Some things become clearer after rest. Some things solve themselves through the simple passage of time. Some things remain uncertain, and we discover that we can still take the next step. You do not need to know the whole road tonight. You only need to rest near the fire. Perhaps the thoughts will keep speaking. Let them speak at a distance. You do not need to invite each one to sit at the table. You do not need to pour tea for every concern. Let the cup remain empty for a while. Feel the open space around the next breath. Feel the open space after the breath leaves. Nothing is missing. Nothing needs to be added. The room is useful because it contains space. The night is gentle because it asks less of you. And you are allowed, for now, to be unfilled. Take a little time here. Notice the blanket where it touches the skin. Notice the places where the bed carries your weight without complaint. There is nothing to achieve in this pause. When the next thought comes, it may come. When it leaves, it may leave. We will continue without hurry. The Tao Te Ching suggests that we return to simplicity. This does not mean that life itself will always be simple. Human life contains relationships, decisions, responsibilities, memories, and changes we cannot predict. Simplicity is not the absence of complexity. It is the absence of unnecessary complication. A meal when you are hungry, water when you are thirsty, rest when you are tired, one step when the path is long, one honest word when many clever words would only confuse. The mind often moves away from simplicity because it believes complicated thinking will create safety. It takes a small event and builds many possible futures around it. Someone's tone changes, and the mind begins searching for reasons. A plan remains uncertain, and the mind begins rehearsing every possible outcome. A mistake is remembered, and the mind imagines that it reveals something permanent about who you are. This is not foolishness. The mind is trying to protect you. It believes that if it thinks far enough ahead, pain may be avoided. But thought can become a room with too many doors. You open one, find another room, then another door, then another question. Before long, you are far from the simple thing that first occurred. The old teachings invite us back. What is here now? A body lying down, a breath moving, a room in darkness, a day that has ended. That is all. The future is not in the room. The past is not in the room. Images of them may appear, but they are images. The room itself remains simple. Consider a story about a woodcarver. The woodcarver was asked to make a small table for a village home. The family wanted something plain and strong. The woodcarver chose a piece of timber and began to work. A young neighbor watched him. "Will you carve birds along the legs?" the neighbor asked. "No," said the woodcarver. "Will you add curling vines around the edge?" "No." "Will you paint a picture across the top?" The woodcarver smiled. The family asked for a table. The young neighbor thought the answer showed little imagination. But when the table was finished, it stood evenly. Its surface was smooth. Its legs were strong. There was room for bowls, bread, elbows and hands. Years passed. Children ate at the table. Friends gathered around it. Letters were written there. Vegetables were prepared. An old person rested a tired arm upon it. The table did not demand attention. It served. Its simplicity made room for life. There is a quiet beauty in something that does not try to be more than it is. A chair that holds the body. A lamp that gives light. A breath that enters and leaves. A moment that does not need to become a lesson. You may feel pressure to make something of every experience. To improve through it. To understand it. To turn difficulty into wisdom quickly, as though pain is only acceptable when it produces a useful result. But perhaps some moments can remain simple. Tiredness can mean you are tired. Sadness can mean something mattered. Uncertainty can mean you do not yet know. Wakefulness can mean the body has not fallen asleep yet. It does not always need to mean more. This can be a relief. You do not have to build an identity around tonight. You do not have to decide that because sleep has been difficult before, it will always be difficult. You do not have to turn one restless hour into a story about the rest of your life. Return to the plain table. Return to what is here, the body, the bed, the breath. There is another old story about a fisherman who went out each morning in a small wooden boat. He carried a net, a jar of water, and a little food. A wealthy merchant once watched him return before midday with enough fish for his household. The merchant said, "Why do you come back so early?" "I have enough," the fisherman replied. "You could stay longer and catch more." "What would I do with more?" "You could sell them. Then you could buy another boat. And then you could hire others to fish. You could build a large business. And then you could become wealthy. And then," the merchant smiled, "then you could rest and enjoy your days." The fisherman looked toward his small house, where his family waited beneath the shade of a tree. "That is what I am going to do now," he said. The story is not telling us that ambition is wrong. It is not asking anyone to abandon work or refuse opportunity. It is simply asking a tender question. Do we sometimes travel a very long distance to reach what is already near? Do we postpone rest until every condition has been perfected? Do we tell ourselves that peace will begin after the next task, the next achievement, the next answer, the next change? There will always be another fish to catch. There will always be another plan. Life does not finish itself neatly and hand us permission to rest. Sometimes we must notice that enough has already arrived. Enough work for one day. Enough thinking for one night. Enough carrying. Enough. The word may feel unfamiliar. You may be used to asking what remains unfinished, what remains uncertain, what remains to be improved. But perhaps tonight you can ask another question. What is already enough? The breath is enough. The bed is enough. This moment is enough. You are enough to be here without proving anything. Carry this with you tonight. You do not need to decorate the table. You do not need to catch every fish in the sea. You do not need to make this moment more meaningful than it is. It may simply be a resting moment. Let the simplicity of that settle. The eyes need not search behind the eyelids. The hands need not prepare for morning. The mind need not finish its journey. One quiet breath, one dark room, one body being held. Enough. The Tao teaches us about returning. Everything returns. Rain falls, gathers, rises, and falls again. Leaves emerge, open, fade, and return to the earth. The breath enters, leaves, and enters once more. The day moves into night, and night gives itself back to morning. Returning is not going backward. It is part of the way. We sometimes imagine that life should move in a straight line. We should become calmer and remain calm. We should understand a lesson once and never forget it. We should heal and never feel the old pain again. We should establish a good rhythm and never lose it. But nature rarely moves in straight lines. The moon changes, the tide returns, the season circles. A tree does not accuse itself when winter comes again. Perhaps you have returned to an old worry. Perhaps you thought you had moved beyond it. Perhaps a feeling has come back, and some part of you says, "Not this again." This too is human. The return of a feeling does not erase the distance you have traveled. A familiar sadness is not proof that nothing has changed. A restless night is not the destruction of all previous rest. You are meeting the same bend in the river with a different body, a different heart, and a little more life behind you. There is a story of a young student who became discouraged during meditation. Each day, the student sat beside an old teacher in a small garden. Each day, thoughts came. The student remembered work. The student planned meals. The student replayed conversations. The student imagined leaving the garden and beginning a different life. After many mornings, the student said, "I keep losing my attention. I bring it back, and then I lose it again. I am not improving." The teacher pointed toward a bird gathering twigs near the wall. "What is it doing?" she asked. "Building a nest." The bird lifted a twig, carried it to a branch, and disappeared among the leaves. A moment later, it returned to the ground. Again it found a twig. Again it carried it upward. Again it returned. The teacher said, "Do you think the bird has failed because it returns to the ground?" The student watched in silence. Returning was not the interruption of the work. Returning was the work. This can be a gentle way to meet the wandering mind. You notice that thought has carried you away. You return to the breath. You notice again. You return to the weight of the body. You notice again. You return to the darkness. No scolding, no disappointment. The return itself is enough. You may return 100 times. You may return without counting. You may forget that you are returning and simply find yourself here again. The Tao does not demand a perfect path. It invites a natural one. A river turns. A path curves around a hill. A bird moves between ground and branch. You can move between thought and rest in the same way. There is another story. An old gardener planted beans each spring along a low fence. One year, a late cold wind damaged the first shoots. The gardener planted again. A neighbor said, "You have lost your work." The gardener shook her head. "The first planting is finished," she said. "Now this is the second." She did not call the season unfair. She did not insist that the garden behave as it had behaved before. She responded to what was present. This is Wu Wei too. Not giving up, not forcing, meeting the real season. Some nights are quiet from the beginning. Some nights contain wind. Some thoughts settle quickly. Some return again and again. You do not need to make tonight resemble another night. You can meet the season that is here. If sleep comes slowly, let it come slowly. If the mind wanders, let returning be gentle. If you wake later, you can begin again without calling it failure. The second planting is not a punishment. It is simply what happens next. Perhaps you can feel how much kinder this is than demanding a straight line. You do not have to reach a permanent state of calm. You only need to return once, then perhaps once more. Come back to the breath. Come back to the bed. Come back to the soft weight of the blanket. Come back without asking where you went. The path is still beneath you. Rest here for a little while. Let the face become less responsible for holding the day together. Let the tongue rest. Let the space behind the eyes become wide. If attention wanders, nothing has gone wrong. The bird returns to the ground. The bird rises again, and the nest is built quietly. The Tao Te Ching often speaks of not contending, not competing, not struggling to stand above. Water moves toward low places that others avoid. Because it does not insist on being highest, it nourishes everything. This teaching can be difficult in a world that often asks us to compare. We compare work. We compare progress. We compare bodies, homes, relationships, and the invisible pace of our lives. Even in rest, comparison can appear. Why can others sleep more easily? Why am I still thinking? Why have I not learned how to let go? Comparison takes a private moment and turns it into a contest no one agreed to enter. The Tao offers a softer ground. The river does not compare its speed to the mountain. The mountain does not compare its stillness to the bird. Each follows its nature. Your body has its own history. Your mind has carried its own weather. You do not need to rest like anyone else. You do not need to heal according to another person's season. You do not need to move at the pace of a life you can only see from the outside. There is an old story about two trees growing beside a field. One was tall and straight. It rose above the roof of a nearby house. The other was low and bent, shaped by years of wind. The tall tree looked across the field and said, "You have grown poorly." The bent tree said nothing. When summer came, children played beneath the low branches. They climbed easily into the tree and rested in its shade. Birds nested where the branches curved. Travelers tied their bundles to the trunk while they drank from a nearby well. The tall tree remained impressive. The bent tree remained useful in another way. Neither tree needed to become the other. We suffer when we take one form of life and make it the measure of every life. Tallness becomes the measure of a tree. Productivity becomes the measure of a day. Happiness becomes the measure of a good person. Sleep becomes the measure of whether the night was successful. But perhaps a wakeful moment can still contain rest. Perhaps lying quietly is not the same as sleeping, but it is not nothing. Perhaps listening without effort allows the body to receive some of what it needs. Perhaps this night does not need to be judged while it is still unfolding. To stop contending is not to stop caring. It is to stop turning every experience into evidence for or against ourselves. You are not on trial here. The night is not a judge. The bed is not a place where you must demonstrate your ability to relax. You may simply be a living person, having the experience you are having. There is another story about two potters who worked in neighboring homes. The first potter made vessels with perfect symmetry. The second made vessels that leaned slightly to one side. The first potter's work was praised at the market. The second potter's bowls were often purchased by farmers because the uneven rim made them easy to hold with wet hands. For many years, the second potter felt ashamed. Then one rainy evening, a farmer visited and said, "Your bowls do not slip." The potter looked at the slight curve he had tried so long to correct. What he had called a defect had become part of the bowl's usefulness. This does not mean that every difficulty hides a secret gift. We do not need to turn pain into a pretty lesson, but we might become slower to condemn what does not match an ideal. Your sensitivity may also be attentiveness. Your caution may have once protected something tender. Your tiredness may be the honest message of a body that has given enough. Your wandering mind may be trying to complete a task it believes is important. You can meet these parts without making them enemies. Not contending begins within. You do not have to fight the mind in order to rest. You do not have to defeat wakefulness. You do not have to win against thought. Fighting a thought often gives it something to push against. Allowing it to pass leaves it without an opponent. Imagine a cloud crossing the night sky. The sky does not chase it. The sky does not ask it to explain itself. The sky gives it room, and because it has room, it moves. Perhaps tonight, each thought can have that much space. Not approval, not agreement, space. A thought says, "Tomorrow may be difficult." You can hear it. A thought says, "You should have done more." You can hear it. A thought offers an old memory. You can let the image appear and fade. No contest, no debate. The river continues toward the low ground. The sky remains wide. You remain here. Carry this with you tonight. Nothing in you needs to be defeated before you are allowed to sleep. The mind does not need to lose. The body does not need to obey. You can stop pulling on the rope. You can let both ends fall. Feel how the mattress receives your weight without comparison. It does not ask whether another body is resting more deeply. It simply holds what is here. Let yourself be held in the same way. A slow breath, a softer face, a little less argument with the night. That is enough. The Tao Te Ching speaks of knowing when enough is enough. This is not always easy, because desire can continue even after a need has been met. The stomach may be full, while the mind still searches. The task may be complete, while the mind still edits it. The day may be over, while some inner worker keeps sweeping the floor. There is nothing wrong with wanting. Desire moves us toward food, warmth, companionship, beauty, and meaningful work. But desire becomes tiring when it cannot recognize arrival, when every achievement immediately becomes the beginning of another demand, when every answer opens a new fear, when rest must be earned again each day. The Tao suggests contentment, not as a forced feeling, but as the ability to notice what is already present. A roof, a breath, a place to lie down, a moment without immediate danger, a little warmth, a little quiet. The mind may say, yes, but tomorrow. Yes, but that conversation. Yes, but the unfinished work. Contentment does not deny these things. It simply refuses to let what is absent erase what is here. Consider a story about a baker who woke before dawn. Each morning, she mixed flour and water, kneaded the dough, and placed loaves into a stone oven. The village loved her bread, but the baker rarely tasted it. While one batch baked, she worried about the next. While customers praised the loaves, she noticed only the crust that had browned unevenly. At night, she remembered every small mistake. One winter morning, her young grandchild visited the bakery. The child sat near the oven and waited. When the first loaf emerged, the baker placed it on the table. The child leaned close and breathed in the warm scent. "It smells like enough," the child said. The baker laughed. "What does enough smell like?" The child tore off a small piece, tasted it, and answered, "Like this." The baker sat down. For the first time in many mornings, she ate a piece of bread while it was still warm. The work remained. More dough waited. Customers would soon arrive. Nothing outside had changed. But for one moment, she had arrived inside her own life. Perhaps this is what contentment feels like. Not a permanent satisfaction. Not the end of all longing. A moment of tasting the bread. A moment of allowing what is here to be received. You may have passed through many moments today without fully arriving in them. You ate while thinking of work. You worked while thinking of what came next. You spoke while part of you prepared another sentence. Again, this is human. Attention is easily carried forward. But tonight, there is nowhere forward you need to go. The bread is warm now. The room is here now. The breath is here now. Can this be enough for a single moment? Not forever, only this moment. There is another story about a traveler who searched for a famous spring said to bring peace to anyone who drank from it. The traveler crossed fields and forests. He asked many people for directions. Some said the spring was beyond the mountains. Others said it was hidden in a deep valley. Years passed. One evening, tired and thirsty, the traveler stopped beside a small stream. He knelt and drank. The water was cool. Wind moved through the grass. For a few breaths, the traveler forgot the famous spring. Then he began to laugh. The peace had not come from finding the right water. It had come when he stopped searching long enough to drink. We may spend much of life seeking the condition under which we will finally permit ourselves to be at ease. When the work is finished, when the uncertainty ends, when the body changes, when someone understands us, when we understand ourselves. But peace may not be a reward waiting at the end of perfect conditions. It may be the small easing that becomes possible when, for one moment, we stop asking the present to become something else. This moment may not be perfect. You may still be uncomfortable. A thought may still be repeating. The body may not feel as relaxed as you hoped. Contentment is not pretending otherwise. It is allowing one true thing to be enough beside the discomfort. The pillow is cool. The blanket is warm. The breath continues. A sound fades. One muscle releases. One sentence does not need to be followed. Taste the bread that is here. Drink from the stream that is here. You do not have to cross another mountain tonight. Perhaps you can say inwardly, enough for now, enough planning, enough reviewing, enough becoming. Not because the future does not matter, because the future will be met more clearly after rest. The Tao does not ask you to possess nothing. It asks you not to be possessed by the need for more. More certainty, more control, more proof that everything will be all right. No amount of thinking can promise that life will never change. But this breath does not require a promise. It only asks to be breathed. Let this be your small practice tonight. When the mind reaches for more, return to what is already touching you. The bed, the air, the quiet. Enough for this breath. Enough for this moment. Enough for now. Rest in that phrase. Let it become softer each time. Enough for now. The body may sink by a small degree. The mind may continue, but perhaps from farther away. There is no need to measure. You are drinking from the stream. The Tao Te Ching often speaks of humility through images of valleys and low places. A valley does not stand above the land. It receives. Rain moves down the mountains and gathers there. Streams meet there. Soil deepens there. Life grows because the valley does not insist on being high. Humility in the Tao is not thinking poorly of yourself. It is not making yourself small so others can remain comfortable. It is the freedom of not needing to stand above or below. It is the ease of being part of the whole. The valley receives water because it is open. The ocean receives rivers because it lies beneath them. There is a quiet dignity in no longer needing to be the highest point. Much of our tension comes from defending a position. We want to be right. We want to be understood. We want our effort to be recognized. We want to know that we have not fallen behind. These desires are natural, but carrying them constantly can make the body rigid. Even after a conversation has ended, we continue making our case in the mind. We explain ourselves more clearly. We imagine the perfect answer. We return to the moment when someone misunderstood and try to change it from the future. But the conversation is no longer happening. Only its echo remains. You do not have to win an echo. There is a story about two neighbors who argued over the boundary between their gardens. A narrow strip of earth lay between them. One neighbor believed the strip belonged to her family. The other was certain it belonged to his. They measured it. They searched old papers. They asked elders in the village. The disagreement continued through many seasons. Neither planted the strip, because planting it might weaken the claim. So weeds grew there. One spring, a child scattered flower seeds across the disputed ground. By summer, the strip was filled with color. Bees moved between the gardens. The neighbors still remembered the argument, but neither wanted to pull up the flowers. At last one said, "Let the bees have it." The other laughed, and that was the end of the dispute. The strip had become useful when neither person possessed it. Not every conflict ends so easily. Some boundaries matter. Some truths must be spoken. Humility does not mean allowing harm, but there are also places where the cost of being right becomes greater than the value of the ground. The mind may be holding a narrow strip tonight. A sentence someone said, a look, a small injustice, an imagined judgment. Perhaps the issue must be addressed tomorrow. Perhaps it does not. You do not have to decide now. For this night, perhaps the bees can have it. Let flowers grow in the disputed ground. Let the argument rest where it is. You can return to it in daylight if needed. There is another story of a scholar who came to question an old hermit. The scholar had studied many teachings and wanted to know which was greatest. He climbed a hill and found the hermit carrying water from a spring. "Tell me the highest truth," the scholar said. The hermit handed him one of the buckets. Together they walked down the path. The scholar repeated the question. The hermit said, "Watch your step." The path was wet. The scholar looked down. They continued. At the house, the hermit poured the water into a large clay jar. The scholar asked again, "What is the highest truth?" The hermit sat on the doorstep. "Perhaps," he said, "you are standing too high to hear it." The scholar did not understand, so he sat down too. The old teachings often lower us toward what is close, not because lofty ideas have no value, because the ordinary world is already teaching. Carry the water, watch the step, sit on the threshold, feel the evening air. The highest truth may be hidden in the willingness to come down from the high place of constant thought. The mind stands above experience and comments on everything. This is good, this is bad, this should continue, this must stop. I am doing well, I am failing. The valley does not comment on the rain, it receives. Tonight, you might become valley-like. You do not need to approve of every feeling. You do not need to name every sensation. You can let experience move downward into the body, a little heaviness in the legs, a little warmth in the hands, a little pressure where the head meets the pillow. Receiving is enough. You are not becoming less. You are becoming open. Perhaps the need to explain yourself can rest. Perhaps the need to be understood by everyone can rest. Perhaps the need to understand everything can rest too. The ocean does not chase rivers. It becomes low enough to receive them. Let the next breath descend. Let the body be the valley. Let thought flow through without needing to be kept. There is nothing humiliating in rest. There is nothing lesser in yielding to the night. Even mountains disappear into darkness. Even the tallest trees become quiet. You may become quiet too. Take a slow pause here. Notice whether the body can give another small amount of weight to the bed. The earth has carried mountains. It can carry you. No explanation is required. No position must be defended. For now, let the bees have the narrow strip. The Tao Te Ching speaks of the uncarved block. Before wood is shaped into a chair, a bowl, a tool, or a sign, it contains many possibilities. The uncarved block has not yet been divided by purpose. The teaching uses this image to point toward natural simplicity, a state before we become tangled in labels, expectations, and the many roles we believe we must perform perfectly. Throughout the day, you may be many things: a worker, a parent, a partner, a friend, a person answering questions, a person making decisions, a person trying to appear calm, a person carrying private thoughts while completing public tasks. These roles may matter deeply, but beneath them is something simpler: a living being breathing in darkness. Before the title, before the duty, before the story of success or failure, just life. Sometimes exhaustion comes not only from what we do, but from maintaining who we believe we must be while doing it. Competent, pleasant, strong, available, certain. We may carry an image of ourselves and spend the day protecting it from cracks. Then night comes, and the image climbs into bed with us. It reviews the day. Did I say the right thing? Did I appear foolish? Was I productive enough? Did I disappoint someone? The uncarved block does not ask how it appeared. It has not yet become an object for display. It simply rests in its own nature. There is a story about a village carpenter who kept a large piece of wood beside his workshop. The wood was twisted and full of knots. Other carpenters had refused it. It cannot become a straight beam, they said. It cannot become a smooth table. It cannot become a proper door. The carpenter did not disagree. He placed the wood beneath a tree. Years passed. Travelers sat upon it while waiting for the road to dry after rain. Children used it as a bridge across a shallow ditch. In winter, the carpenter leaned tools against it. One day, a visitor asked, "Why have you never shaped that wood?" The carpenter answered, "Because it has already found many uses by not becoming one thing." The wood was not useless. It was free from a narrow use. Perhaps you have parts of yourself that do not fit the shape you expected. A path that curved. A skill that developed slowly. A tenderness that made certain places difficult. A need for more rest than you thought you should need. We quickly call these knots. We imagine that a good life must be straight and smooth. But the Tao asks us to look again. A twisted tree may offer the widest shade. An uneven bowl may remain in the family for generations because it fits the hands. A quiet person may notice what others overlook. A slow season may protect something that is not ready to be exposed. You do not need to carve every part of yourself into usefulness tonight. You do not need to make your weariness meaningful. You can be the uncarved block, without a role, without a performance, without a reason for resting beyond the fact that you are tired. There is another small story. A young actor returned home after performing in many villages. For years, the actor had played kings, beggars, warriors, fools, and wise elders. When the actor reached the family home, an old grandmother opened the door. The actor began telling stories of the journey. The grandmother listened, then said, "You must be tired from being so many people." The actor smiled. Yes. The grandmother placed a bowl of soup on the table. "Then do not be anyone while you eat." The actor sat down. No audience watched. No applause followed. The soup was warm. For a little while, the actor had no part to play. Perhaps you too are tired from being many people. Tonight, no audience is here. You do not need to sound wise. You do not need to appear peaceful. You do not need to be the person who handles everything well. You can stop performing rest and simply lie down. Even the effort to be calm can become another role. The calm person breathes correctly. The calm person has no intrusive thoughts. The calm person accepts everything. But real calm is often less polished. It may include a sigh. It may include discomfort. It may include a mind that keeps wandering until, at some unnoticed moment, it stops. You do not have to become calm enough for sleep. You can let sleep come to the person who is already here, knotted, unfinished, human. Carry this with you tonight. Before every name you have been given and every role you have learned, there is the simple life within you. That life does not need a title. It does not need to prove its value. It breathes. It receives warmth. It grows tired. It rests. Let the names fall away one by one. Not forever, only for the night. The work can wait outside the room. The expectations can remain near the door. The image of who you must be can loosen, like clothing at the end of a long day. You are not required to hold your shape while sleeping. The uncarved block rests. The river rests in the sea. The actor eats without performing, and you may be no one in particular for a while. Feel the simplicity of that. No title, no task, no audience. Only the breath, only the bed, only this quiet descent. The Tao teaches that the wise person does not overfill. A vessel filled to the very edge is difficult to carry. A blade sharpened without end becomes thin and fragile. A room crowded with treasures becomes a place of worry. The teaching is not against abundance. It is reminding us that more is not always safer. Sometimes enough space must remain for movement. The mind can also become overfilled. Too many plans, too many voices, too much information, too many imagined futures competing for attention. When the mind is filled to the edge, even a small concern spills over. You may notice this after a long day. A minor inconvenience feels larger than it would have felt in the morning. A simple decision becomes exhausting. A sound seems too sharp. A message feels heavier than its words. This does not mean you are unreasonable. The cup is full. The answer is not always to become stronger. Sometimes the answer is to pour something out. There is a story about a woman who carried water from a well each evening. She used 2 clay jars, suspended from a wooden pole across her shoulders. One jar was new and held every drop. The other had a small crack. By the time the woman reached home, half its water had leaked away. The cracked jar felt ashamed. After many months it said, "You should replace me. I make your work less useful." The woman lowered the pole and pointed toward the path. Along one side, flowers were growing. "I planted seeds there," she said. "I knew where your water would fall." The jar had not carried everything home, but the path had become beautiful. We often judge ourselves by what we managed to retain, how much energy remained, how much attention we could sustain, how perfectly we carried the day from beginning to end. But perhaps not everything was meant to arrive intact. Some energy was given to a conversation, some attention watered another person, some strength leaked into acts so ordinary that no one recorded them. By night, you may feel less full. That does not mean the day was wasted. The flowers may be growing where you cannot see them. You are allowed to arrive with an empty jar. You are allowed to have nothing more to pour. Rest is not the reward for carrying every drop perfectly. Rest is what allows the journey to continue. There is another story about an old musician who played a stringed instrument. A student asked how tightly the strings should be drawn. The musician tightened one string until it snapped. "Not this tight," he said. Then he loosened another until it made no sound. "Not this loose." He adjusted a third string and touched it gently. A clear note filled the room. The lesson was not that life must always be perfectly balanced. Balance changes. A string that was right yesterday may need adjustment today. The lesson was attention. Too tight, and something breaks. Too loose, and something cannot respond. Wisdom listens. Your body has been sending notes all day. Perhaps they were quiet at first. A small heaviness, a shortening of patience, a desire to withdraw, a need to stretch, a need to stop. We often ignore these notes until the string becomes painful. Tonight, you do not need to analyze the body. You can simply listen. Where are you holding more tightly than necessary? Not where should you relax completely. That question can become demanding. Only where might one small adjustment be possible? The forehead, the space around the eyes, the shoulders, the fingers, the belly, the feet. Choose nothing if choosing feels like work. Let the body make its own adjustment. Sometimes being noticed is enough. The cracked jar did not need to become whole before it could belong. The string did not need maximum tension to make a clear sound. The cup did not need to be filled to prove it was useful. You also do not need to become more complete before resting. You do not need to end the day full of certainty, confidence, or energy. Empty is allowed. Cracked is allowed. Quiet is allowed. The Tao finds usefulness in what the world overlooks. It finds power in softness. It finds fullness in emptiness. It finds movement in stillness. Perhaps this is why the teaching feels so close to sleep. Sleep asks us to release the values of the day. During the day, we praise alertness. At night, we surrender it. During the day, we move and produce. At night, we become still. During the day, we hold our shape. At night, we soften into weight. Nothing has gone wrong when you become less capable at the end of a long day. You are following the rhythm. The cup is being emptied. The string is being loosened. The river is returning to the sea. Carry this with you tonight. You do not have to preserve the day. Let it leak away. Let the conversations blur. Let the details lose their edges. Let what mattered settle deeper than memory. The flowers will keep what they need. You may arrive at sleep with empty hands. Take a gentle breath. Notice the natural pause after it leaves. No need to hold the pause. No need to extend it. The body knows how to begin again. For now, less is welcome. Less thought. Less effort. Less holding. Nothing missing. Only space opening. Stillness in the Tao is not lifelessness. A still pond is full of movement beneath the surface. Roots grow beneath a tree that appears motionless. Stars cross the sky too slowly for the eye to notice. A person sitting quietly may contain an entire world. Stillness does not mean that nothing is happening. It means that movement is no longer being forced into visibility. This matters because we may fear stillness. When we stop, we notice tiredness. We notice grief. We notice questions that activity helped us avoid. We may discover how much effort was required to keep moving. And so stillness can feel less like peace at first and more like hearing a room after a machine has been turned off. The silence seems loud. The body may fidget. The mind may create new tasks. This is not proof that you are unable to be still. It is the sound of momentum slowly fading. A spinning wheel does not stop the instant the hand leaves it. It turns for a while. Thought can do the same. The day has removed its hand, but the wheel continues. You do not have to stop it with your palm. Let it slow. There is an old story about a pond that had become muddy after heavy rain. A young seeker came to fill a jar but found the water cloudy. The seeker stirred it with a stick, hoping to move the mud aside. The water became cloudier. An old woman passing by said, "Leave it." The seeker waited for a few moments, then stirred again. "Leave it longer," said the woman. The seeker sat beneath a tree. At first, waiting felt useless. The jar remained empty. The journey home was delayed, but as the sun moved across the sky, the mud began to settle. By evening, the pond reflected the clouds. The seeker filled the jar. Clarity had arrived through non-interference. We often try to think our way out of overthinking. We search the muddy water for a clear answer. We stir faster. We examine each particle. We ask why the water is not clear yet. But perhaps the mind is not asking for another thought. Perhaps it is asking to be left alone. This does not mean suppressing what arises. Suppression is another kind of stirring. It means allowing thoughts to settle according to their own weight. Some may remain near the surface. Some may sink quickly. Some may return tomorrow. You do not need to direct them. Your awareness can be like the bank of the pond, present, unhurried, not entering the water. There is another story about a watchman who guarded a village gate. Every evening, the watchman stood beneath a small lamp. Travelers came and went. Carts passed. Dogs wandered through. The watchman noticed each one but did not follow them down the road. A young assistant once asked, "How do you keep track of everything?" The watchman said, "I do not keep it. I see it arrive, and I see it leave." The assistant tried this. At first, every traveler seemed important. The assistant wondered where each person was going, what each bundle contained, and whether each face could be trusted. The watchman said, "The gate is not a house. You do not have to make every traveler stay. The mind is often treated like a house, where every thought must be given a room, but it may be more like a gate. Thoughts enter, thoughts leave. Some are familiar, some are strange. Some carry memories, some carry fears. You can notice them without following. A thought about tomorrow approaches the gate. There it is. A memory crosses beneath the lamp. There it goes. A question pauses. It may continue when it is ready. You do not have to keep track. This gentle watching is not another duty. You do not need to become an excellent watchman. You may fall asleep at the gate. That is perfectly all right. The Tao does not celebrate stillness because stillness looks peaceful. It celebrates stillness because stillness allows things to return to their nature. Muddy water clears. A frightened animal emerges when the forest becomes quiet. A tired body remembers how to descend. You may not feel still, but perhaps you can stop demanding stillness. That itself is a form of non-interference. Let restlessness be one of the movements within the larger stillness of the room. The room is still enough to contain it. The night is still enough to contain the room. The sky is still enough to contain every passing cloud. And something in you is wide enough to contain this moment, exactly as it is. Carry this with you tonight. Stillness does not require the absence of movement. The breath can move. Thought can move. Sensation can move. You can remain. Like the bank beside the river. Like the sky around weather. Like the lamp above the gate. There is nothing you need to catch. Nothing you need to keep. Let the travelers pass. Let the mud descend. Let the wheel turn until it no longer turns. You do not need to know the moment when sleep begins. No one stands at the edge of sleep and watches themselves cross. The crossing happens when the watchman stops keeping count. Perhaps the words are already becoming distant. Perhaps some have passed without being heard. Good. Nothing has been lost. The pond is settling. The Tao Te Ching offers the image of a tree that grows from a tiny seed and a journey that begins beneath the feet. Large things emerge from what is small. Yet we often overlook the small because the mind is drawn toward completion. We want the whole answer, the full change, the finished road, the complete night of rest. But life gives itself in smaller portions. One breath, one step, one mouthful, one moment of release. This can be especially helpful when the mind imagines the whole future at once. Tomorrow arrives as a single heavy object. The week arrives. The year arrives. All the work, all the uncertainty, all the possible difficulty seems to gather at the foot of the bed. But tomorrow will not actually arrive all at once. It will arrive as one sound in the morning, one movement of the body, one first step, one task, then another. The mind carries entire mountains because it forgets that the feet only meet one piece of ground at a time. There is a story about a traveler who stood before a long mountain path. The path disappeared into mist. The traveler became afraid. "How can I walk so far when I cannot see the end?" he asked an old guide. The guide held up a lantern. Its light reached only a short distance. "This will not show the whole path," the traveler said. "No," replied the guide, "but when you reach the edge of the light will reach farther." The traveler took one step, then another. The mountain did not become smaller. The entire road did not become visible. But the next piece of ground appeared when it was needed. An anxious mind tries to light the whole mountain. It believes that uncertainty is danger. It wants to see every turn before taking the first step. But no lantern works that way. Wisdom does not always mean seeing farther. Sometimes it means trusting the next circle of light. Tonight, the next circle is very small. The next breath, the next sensation, the next moment of lying here. You do not need to see morning. Morning will enter its own light. There is another story about a seamstress who was given a large piece of cloth and asked to make a blanket before winter. The seamstress spread the cloth across the floor and felt overwhelmed by its size. She imagined every cut, every stitch, every place where the fabric might tear. For several days, she did nothing. At last, her grandmother visited. The grandmother sat beside the cloth, threaded a needle, and made one stitch. Then she handed the needle to the seamstress. "Do not make the blanket," she said. "Make this stitch." The seamstress made one stitch, then another. Weeks later, the blanket was complete. But no single moment had contained the whole blanket. It had contained only the stitch being made. You may be trying to make the whole blanket tonight, to heal completely, to become peaceful, to prepare for every possibility, to sleep for the entire night. But no one sleeps for an entire night at once. Sleep happens moment by moment, beyond our supervision. You only need this stitch, this breath, this softening. Then the next may happen by itself. The Tao often places greatness inside smallness, a quiet choice not to answer immediately, a pause before reacting, a cup placed down, a shoulder released, a worry postponed until morning. These actions may seem too small to matter, but a river is made of drops that do not know they are making a river. A blanket is made of stitches that do not see the whole design. A tree grows through changes too small to watch. You do not have to feel a dramatic shift. The absence of drama may be the teaching. Perhaps one part of the body is slightly more comfortable than it was before. Perhaps one thought has lost its sharpness. Perhaps your attention has drifted away from the words and returned without urgency. These are small things. Small is enough. Carry this with you tonight. When the mind presents the whole mountain, return to the lantern. What is within the light now? The pillow beneath the head, the air near the face, the rise and fall of the chest. Nothing beyond this circle needs to be carried. Tomorrow's tasks remain beyond the mist. They are not asking to be walked tonight. The needle is in your hand only for this stitch. Then it can be placed down. Let the next breath be small. Let the next release be small. There is no need for a great surrender. A tiny loosening is still loosening. A tiny rest is still rest. The seed does not look like the tree. The stitch does not look like the blanket. This moment does not need to look like deep sleep. It may still be leading there. Rest in the small circle of light. The rest of the path can remain hidden. The Tao Te Ching speaks of trust, without always using the word trust. It shows us a world in which life moves through patterns larger than our plans. The sun rises without our instruction. The season turns. The body repairs itself in sleep. Water evaporates, gathers, and returns as rain. This does not mean everything happens as we wish. The Tao is not a promise that no loss will come, or that every road will be easy. It is an invitation to loosen the belief that only our constant control keeps life moving. You have participated in life today. You made choices. You responded. You carried what you could. Now another kind of participation is possible. Receiving, yielding, allowing the processes beneath awareness to continue. Trust can be difficult when life has surprised us painfully. The body may learn that vigilance is safer than surrender. It may remain awake because some old part believes that watching will prevent harm. We do not need to argue with that part. We can meet it as we would meet a tired guard who has stood at the gate too long. Thank you. You have been watching for a long time. You may sit down now. There is a story about a night guard who protected a small village storehouse. For many years, the guard walked the same path beneath the stars. One winter, a younger guard arrived to share the work, but the older guard continued walking every night. "You can rest," said the younger one. "I am here." The older guard nodded, then walked another round. The next night, the same thing happened. At last, the younger guard placed a chair beside the gate. "You do not have to sleep," he said. "Just sit." The older guard sat. For several nights, he remained awake in the chair. Then one night, while listening to the younger guard's footsteps, his eyes closed. Trust had not arrived as a decision. It had arrived through repeated evidence that he was no longer alone. Perhaps some part of you is still walking the boundary. You do not have to command it to sleep. You might simply offer it a chair. Let it listen to the breath. Let it feel the bed. Let it notice that this moment is being held. The older guard did not fail because he could not rest immediately. He had practiced vigilance for many years. Rest needed time to become believable. This is important. You do not have to blame yourself for the speed at which the body learns safety. You can be patient with the guard. You can offer the chair again tomorrow, and again the next night. Wu Wei includes this patience. It does not force trust. It creates conditions where trust may grow. There is another story about a child learning to float in a quiet pond. The child held tightly to an elder's hands. "Do not let go," the child said. "I will not," the elder replied. The child's body remained stiff and began to sink. "Let the water hold you," said the elder. "I do not trust the water. Then trust my hands while you learn." Slowly, the child allowed the head to move backward. The water rose around the ears. The elder's hands remained beneath the child's shoulders. For a moment, the child floated. Nothing dramatic happened. The pond simply did what water does. The child had not learned to control the water. The child had learned to stop fighting its support. The bed is like the pond. It has been holding you all along. You do not have to believe completely in rest. You might trust the mattress for one moment. Trust the pillow to hold the head. Trust the breath to return after it leaves. Trust the night to move whether or not you watch it. You are not being asked to float without support. Support is already beneath you. Sometimes the mind says, "If I let go, I will lose control." But sleep is the daily practice of losing a certain kind of control and discovering that life continues. The heart keeps beating. The lungs keep breathing. The body changes position. Dreams rise and fade. Morning finds us. We surrender every night because the body remembers what the mind forgets. We belong to processes that do not require supervision. Carry this with you tonight. You do not need to trust everything. Trust one small support, the weight beneath you, the air entering, the sound of a calm voice, the darkness remaining where it is. Let the guard sit. Let the child feel the water. No demand to sleep, only permission to be supported. Perhaps you can imagine hands beneath the shoulders, not holding tightly, just present. You may remain awake. You may drift. You may hear the words. You may lose them. The pond will continue holding you. The Tao is sometimes described as returning to the source. A stream may twist through fields and forests, but it remains water. A branch may reach in many directions, but it belongs to one tree. A person may pass through many years and roles, yet something simple remains beneath every change. We spend much of life moving outward, toward work, toward people, toward goals, toward problems that need attention. This outward movement is natural, but without return, we become scattered. Sleep is one of the oldest forms of return. The senses soften, the boundaries of the day loosen. The person who has been many things becomes a breathing body again. You return not to the past, but to the source beneath activity. There is an old story about a village bell that sounded each morning and evening. During the day, its sound traveled across fields and rooftops. Farmers heard it, children heard it, travelers on the distant road heard it faintly. But after every ringing, the bell returned to silence. A young student asked the keeper of the bell, "Where does the sound go?" The keeper answered, "Where it came from." The student listened. The bell was silent, but not empty. The next sound rested within it. You too have sounded through the day. You spoke, you answered, you reacted, you thought, you moved through the lives of others. Now you may return to silence, not a silence that erases you, a silence that contains you. The bell does not lose its purpose when it stops ringing. It preserves its sound by returning to stillness. Perhaps you have worried that rest will interrupt your progress, but rest may be the place from which meaningful movement becomes possible again. The bow must sometimes be unstrung, the field must sometimes lie fallow, the voice must sometimes stop speaking, the mind must sometimes stop solving. This is not separate from life. It is part of the rhythm that keeps life whole. There is another story about a stream that left the mountains. It passed through a narrow valley, then crossed dry land. Along the way, it became afraid of disappearing. It tried to hold itself together. It resisted the earth. It rushed wherever the ground sloped downward. At last, it reached a wide desert where the water sank into sand. The stream cried, "I am being lost." The wind answered, "You have changed before. I was always water. You will still be water." The sun lifted part of the stream as vapor. The wind carried it across the desert. Beyond the dry land, it fell as rain and gathered again. The stream had not crossed the desert by remaining in the same form. It had crossed by allowing transformation. Sleep is a small transformation. The waking mind fears losing continuity. It wants to remain aware of itself, but the self does not disappear in sleep. It changes form. Thought becomes image. Time becomes strange. The body enters deeper rhythms. Then waking returns. You have crossed this desert many times. Even on nights when sleep felt difficult, the body found moments of change. You do not need to understand the crossing. The stream did not become wind by planning how. It yielded to a process larger than its familiar shape. Perhaps tonight you can allow yourself to become less defined. The edges of the body may blur into the bed. The meaning of the words may blur into sound. The difference between listening and dreaming may become less important. You do not have to remain the person who began this narration. That person may soften. The bell may stop ringing. The stream may rise. The day may return to its source. There is nothing frightening in this return. You have returned many times. The source is not a distant place. It is the quiet beneath the sentence, the pause beneath the breath, the stillness beneath the movement of thought. Even now, it is here. The Tao Te Ching says that the way cannot be fully spoken. Words can only point. So perhaps the words have done enough. Perhaps they can begin to thin. The teaching is not inside the explanation. It is inside the water moving around the stone, inside the empty bowl, inside the reed becoming soft, inside the traveler setting down the bag, inside the guard sitting in the chair, inside you, as the body remembers that it does not need to remain on duty forever. Carry this with you tonight. Every outward movement contains the possibility of return. You have not gone too far. You are not too scattered. The stream knows water. The bell knows silence. The body knows rest. Let the next breath return to where breaths return. Let the next thought fade to where thoughts fade. You do not need to follow. Rest for a while in the quiet after the bell. We have moved through many simple images together. A river following the shape of the land. a cup that becomes useful through emptiness, a plant that cannot be pulled into growth, a reed softened in water, a muddy pond clearing when left alone, a lantern lighting only the next few steps, a guard learning to sit, a bell returning to silence. They may seem like different teachings, but perhaps they have been pointing toward the same thing. Life does not always need more pressure from us. Sometimes it needs room. Sometimes it needs patience. Sometimes it needs a hand to open. The Tao is not another standard you must meet. It is not a demand that you become perfectly effortless. Trying to force yourself into wu-wei would be another form of forcing. Trying to become as soft as water would make softness into a task. The old teaching can remain much simpler. Notice where the struggle is unnecessary. Then, perhaps, do a little less. Not nothing, a little less. Hold the thought less tightly. Demand certainty less urgently. Judge the restless body less quickly. Carry tomorrow less completely. This is enough. There is one final story. In a quiet town, an ordinary person lived beside a small garden. Each morning this person swept the doorstep, carried water, prepared food, and went about the day's work. There was nothing remarkable about the life. Some days went smoothly, some did not. Sometimes the person worried. Sometimes impatience appeared. Sometimes sleep came quickly. Sometimes the night was long. Near the garden stood a stone basin that collected rainwater. After storms, the water became clouded with soil and leaves. The person had once tried to clean it immediately, reaching in with both hands, lifting leaves and stirring the mud. But over the years, something changed. After rain, the person simply waited. By morning, the leaves floated to one side. The soil rested at the bottom. The water reflected the sky again. One evening, after a difficult day, the person sat beside the basin. The mind was full of things that should have been said, and things that should have happened differently. The old habit of stirring began. Then the person looked into the cloudy water. Nothing needed to be explained. The basin did not demand clear water before nightfall. The garden did not ask the storm to apologize. The soil was settling at its own pace. The person went inside. A bowl was placed on the table. A lamp was lowered. Shoes were left near the door. In bed, the mind continued for a while. But the person did not reach into it. One thought floated past, then another. Somewhere in the night, the water cleared. The person did not know the moment it happened. Morning light simply appeared in the basin. This ordinary person had not mastered the Tao. There was no final achievement, no permanent calm, only a growing willingness not to interfere with every process, to work when work was needed, to wait when waiting was wiser, to speak when words were useful, to become silent when words had done enough, to hold what could be held, to release what could not. This is all the teachings have been suggesting. Not a different life, a different relationship to the life already here. The river still meets stones. The farmer still plants. The guard still watches. The traveler still walks. Wu-wei does not remove action. It removes the extra struggle of demanding that reality becomes something else before we meet it. You can meet this night as it is. Perhaps sleep is near. Perhaps it is still approaching. Perhaps you have already drifted and returned. Nothing needs to be corrected. The basin is settling. The path is lighting itself one step at a time. The guard is seated. The stream is changing form. You already know more of this than words can teach. You have practiced wu-wei every time you allowed laughter to come without planning it. Every time you listened without preparing an answer. Every time you waited for the right word, rather than forcing one. Every time you stopped working because the body had given enough. Every time you trusted someone else to carry part of the weight. Every time you fell asleep. The way is not foreign. It is woven through ordinary life. It may have been covered by noise, but it was never absent. You do not need to become one with the Tao. You were never outside it. The breath is moving in the way of breath. The heart is moving in the way of the heart. Night is moving in the way of night, and you are moving with it, even when you feel still. Perhaps this is the deepest reassurance. You do not have to guide the whole river. You are already being carried. We have walked a long way together, though perhaps we have not really traveled anywhere. We began beside water, and water has remained near us. We watched the traveler put down his bag. We sat beside the farmer's field and learned not to pull the shoots. We entered the basket maker's workshop and felt strength becoming soft. We looked into the empty bowl. We drank tea while questions waited. We watched the bird return again and again. We sat beside the muddy pond. We held the lantern beneath the mountain. We offered the tired guard a chair. And now, perhaps, all these figures can fade. You do not need to remember them. You do not need to carry their lessons into tomorrow. Let them remain here, like quiet companions beside the road. What was useful has already settled. What was not needed can pass. There is nothing left to understand, nothing left to collect, nothing left to prove. The Tao Te Ching is sometimes treated as a book of great mystery, but perhaps its mystery is gentle. Water flows. The empty bowl receives. The soft overcomes the hard. The wise person does not force. The day ends. The body rests. Simple words, a lifetime inside them, but not a lifetime you need to solve tonight. Tonight, let wisdom become very small. Do not stir the water. Do not pull the plant. Do not light the whole mountain. Do not invite every traveler to stay. A little less effort, a little more space. That is enough. You may notice the breath now, or you may not. It is happening either way. You may notice the weight of the body, or the body may already be fading from attention. Nothing needs to be brought back. Let attention drift. Let the sentences become fragments. Let fragments become sound. Let sound become quiet. You do not have to stay with me until the end. Sleep is allowed to interrupt. Sleep is welcome to take the place of listening. There is nowhere else you need to be. No message needs to be answered. No decision needs to be made. No version of tomorrow needs to be rehearsed. Tomorrow will arrive through its own doorway. You can meet it then. For now, the door is closed. The lamp is low. The bowl is empty. The river is dark beneath the night sky. It moves without hurry. It does not know the distance to the sea. It does not need to know. Stone by stone, bend by bend. It follows the shape of the land. Perhaps you can follow the shape of this moment. If the body is heavy, let it be heavy. If the mind is quiet, let it be quiet. If thoughts remain, let them remain without becoming your work. The sky does not reject clouds. The pond does not reject leaves. The night does not reject wakefulness. Everything can belong for a while, and because it belongs, it can change. One thought fades, one muscle releases, one breath leaves. The next breath arrives without being summoned. You are not responsible for keeping life moving while you sleep. The heart knows, the lungs know, the night knows. Let the old guard sit down. Let the actor stop performing. Let the carpenter leave the wood unshaped. Let the baker taste the bread. Let the traveler drink from the nearby stream. Let the child float. Let the bell return to silence. And let yourself be no one in particular. Not the person who must improve. Not the person who must understand. Not the person who must be ready. Only a warm, breathing life beneath a blanket. Already worthy of rest. Already held. Already part of the way. The day can loosen now. Its details can become indistinct. Faces can fade. Rooms can fade. Words can lose their edges. You do not have to preserve any of it. What matters will return when it is needed. What does not return may not need to. The mind has carried enough. The body has carried enough. You have carried enough. Set down the bag. Leave it beside the door. There is nothing in it that must enter your dreams. If one concern remains close, you do not have to push it away. You can place it gently beside the bed. Not forgotten. Not solved. Simply resting too. Everything may rest. The questions, the plans, the hopes, the disappointments. Even longing can lie down. Even uncertainty can close its eyes. There is room for all of it in the great quiet of night. And beneath it all, the river continues, soft, patient, untroubled by distance. You may follow, not by effort, by allowing. The mattress beneath you, the darkness around you, the breath moving through you. Nothing to fix, nothing to force, nothing to become. The water clears when left alone. The seed grows in darkness. The path appears beneath the lantern. The sea waits without calling. You are allowed to be carried towards sleep in the same way. Slowly, if slowly is what comes. Quietly, if quietly is what comes. without knowing the exact moment when waking becomes dream. There is no need to watch the doorway. There is no need to stand guard. Sit down, rest your head. Let the lamp burn low. Let the old words fade. The way that can be spoken is not the whole way, and so we can stop speaking. The river does not need an explanation. The night does not need a conclusion. The body does not need permission beyond the permission already given. Rest now. Let the breath soften by itself. Let the space after each thought widen by itself. Let sleep come by its own road. You do not need to meet it halfway. It knows where you are. You are here. You are held. You are enough. Nothing more is required. Sleep well.